Hey everybody, let's make a quick rundown on the patch notes that dropped now. I already saw the buffs regarding Lee Sin and Riven, which I'm super excited about. Let's see how that turns out. Alright, let's dive right into it. We've got Aphelios. I mean, that champion. Who plays that champ? Only one tricks, right? So we got base health increased 580 to 600, and the bonus damage on the passive increased as well. Okay. Yeah, I still think since the game is shifting towards a late game now, I think this will be pretty valuable for Aphelios laning phase. And then we've got Caitlyn, attack speed increased slightly, and the Q damage to secondary targets. Okay. I mean, she will be more oppressive in lane then. Makes sense since the early game champions got hit hard, right? And then we've got Corki. I remember those days where you used to play this champ on bot lane and it was designed to be an ADC, but time shifted and everyone just playing it in the mid lane. So the mana cost went down early levels, increased W damage. Oh, okay, it's also scaling with AD now, which is good. And the E got nerfed slightly. Okay, I think these changes this champ is kind of trash in my opinion. Q mana cost decrease, W damage increase, E mana cost decreased. Not much to say to that. Alright, next up we've got Mundo. E bonus damage increased. Decreased actually. Mundo is the strongest freaking late game carry I've ever seen. Like if this guy gets to 6 items, no one can stop him. Yeah, it's just like a late game hyper carry on this tank. Who doesn't like the 6k HP, 200 armor MR, as well as 680 hyper carry in the late game? It's hard to get to that point, right? Okay. And then we've got Jhin. I actually played some. Let's see the changes first before I talk about it. 80 growth decreased slightly. Okay. Minimum damage decreased. Oh, okay. What are they saying? Jhin is about happy as Jhin main getting a quarter kill, but he's too strong at the moment, especially in lower skill brackets where games go later. He should be more of a utility champion, less of a late game carry, so we're lowering his late game guaranteed damage by reducing his ultimate damage and AD growth. I see. Okay, so the thing with Jhin is, did you guys know the interaction with static shift? It's crazy. You can hit the minions. It will leave a mark on the enemy, right? If it hits them. So you can combine that with your W and engage that way, which is pretty sick. And now we're getting to the juicy stuff. Lee Sin buffs, finally. He's been getting a lot of buffs recently, but especially now since the game is shifting more towards late game. He was in a pretty tough spot, in my opinion. So they increased his AD base damage by 3, which is huge in the early game. It's gonna make his clear much faster, as well as his early gank stronger. Yeah, so you can use that to snowball early game even further. As they mentioned already, he falls off pretty significantly, right? So it's important, it's really important that this champion stays strong in the early game, actually. But on the other hand, you need to make sure to make use of your advantage, right? And actually get a lead. If you don't, it's looking rough. Okay, some Mordekaiser changes. Q single bonus damage decrease. That's fair. Yeah, this champ is a 1v1 monster. I mean, nothing you can do about it, right? He doesn't even have to hit his abilities to kill you, which is silly in my opinion, but hey, it is what it is. Moving on to Nila. E cast time reduced. It's instant now. Yeah, there was a slight delay on her E, which made it a bit clunky. I think that's a good change. And then we've got Pantheon. W damage increased. I don't know, man. This champion is already really oppressive in the laning phase, so he's gonna be really darn strong, I think, now. Let's see the numbers. So that means it's better against tanks, right? I'm telling you this over and over again. Riot's making this game so beginner friendly, but I mean, makes sense. Most of the people playing are in lower brackets, right? Higher percentage at least. Okay, let's see Poppy changes. Passive cooldown increased, sorry. Q monster damage increased. E damage increased. Do they want to get Poppy into the jungle? So the passive went from 13 seconds to 16 seconds, which is huge. So it's a huge hit during laning phase. And then Q damage cap versus monsters increased, and the E damage decreased as well. I mean, Poppy is a really niche pick, right? She really excels into people that dash. By the way, I hate playing Kalista into Poppy, because once you get cancelled, you can't jump anymore for a few seconds. Just really annoying. Pro tip, pick Poppy into Kalista, guys, on bot lane. And the Riven buffs, let's go. I've been telling this all this time, but people didn't believe me that Riven was in a really rough state. Simply because she didn't have access to the CDR that she used to have. And yeah, she was just lacking in a lot of areas. So I'm happy to see some buffs here. And they're particularly buffing the Q damage, which goes from 15 to 45. I believe it's on each iteration, right? So that's massive. It's actually super massive. Yeah, I'm excited to see how this turns out to be. Alright, moving on to Shyvana. Move speed, 12% per 100 AP to 10% per 100 AP. Okay. Well, it's gonna affect her late game rather than anything. Let's see. Dragon Form Ground DPS 60 to 120 plus 15 plus 20 to 40 to 100. That's interesting. Should be much weaker in the early game then. Scaling stayed the same. That's interesting to see. It's Dragon Form though. And then the R, the scaling went down, which is fine since her main damage comes from out of her E rate. Let's see. Singed. Armor growth decreased. Okay, I think. Yeah, this is the Singed is just like Mundo AP version of it. He's such a hyper carry in the late game. Even though he's pretty squishy. This does hit him hard actually in the late game. Scanner. I don't even talk about this champ. This champ is so broken in my opinion. I just died the other day. After I looked at the death recap, it said I was stunned for 6 seconds. Like, how crazy is that? Passive damage decreased. Well deserved. E damage decreased. Well deserved. Nothing else to say about it. Hate this champ. Alright, Tristana. E range increased and R range increased as well. That's interesting. Micro patch for Tristana, a couple of days went live and looks like with critical strike builds she's performing just about right. However, her level 1 spell ranges weren't increased to match her attack, which we're fixing in the patch. Oh, okay, so it was not adapted to her attack range increase last patch, right? Trinimir. This champion is just a low elo smacker, no? Isn't it? Attack speed ratio increased and armor growth increased. The buffing has earlier led to. Okay. Udyr. This guy is a monster pather. So tanky and does so much damage for no reason. Yeah, he has been pretty strong for a while. Let's see the changes. Against monsters decreased, so his clear time will be a bit higher. Bonus move speed decreased and damage on R decreased as well. Considering he has no stunning late game, this might hit him hard. Veigar, simple changes. W damage decreased. It went from 85 to 305. Oh, the scaling decreased. Okay. By 10% on each stage. Changes towards mid-late game, Veigar. I mean, at this point, Veigar should one-shot anything as well already. At this point, Veigar should one-shot anything, right? Oh, this is what people have been arguing about a lot, right? The Q changes on YASUO and Yone. The damage for critical strike went from 80% to 9%. Armor penetration went up as well. I think these are good changes because they were in a rough spot when tanks got buffed and they had a rough early game since damage is gone, right? And then Yone, same thing. All right, then let's leave it at that. Regarding the champion changes, the item changes I think are pretty self-explanatory. There are some rune changes and that's about it. All right, cool. Yeah, I'm really happy to see the Riven and Lee Sin buffs in play. Let's see how that turns out. Hope you guys enjoyed and I'd catch you guys in the next one. Peace.